That ticking sound. You're driving home from work, the engine is warm, and out of nowhere it starts. Tick, 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 tick. Then it gets louder. Then it speeds up when you press the gas. Your stomach drops, you pull over, you call a tow truck, because every comment section on the internet has told you that ticking equals catastrophic failure. $200 in towing later, you're standing in a fluorescent lit service bay listening to a man in a polo shirt tell you that your engine is destroyed. Internal bearing failure, rod knock. Spun a bearing. The quote is $4,000, maybe $7,000 if you want the dealer reman. And the part that really gets you is he doesn't even seem sad about it. He's smiling. He's smiling because he knows what most drivers don't. Out of the 5 most common engine ticks in 2026, only one of them actually deserves a $4,000 quote. The other 4 range from completely free to a couple $100, and the entire service industry is built on you not knowing the difference. Today we're ranking the 5 engine ticks from $0 to $4,000, and I'm going to teach you how to tell them apart from your driveway with no tools and no diagnostic scanner. This is the triage flowchart that any honest master mechanic uses in their first 30 seconds with a car, and the same one that somehow gets forgotten the moment a customer walks through a dealership door with a checkbook. Before we go any further, the standard line. This is educational content. I'm sharing the diagnostic framework so you walk into a shop informed instead of scared. I'm not telling you to skip a real mechanic. I'm telling you to walk in with knowledge so you don't get carved up. Hot engines burn. Spinning belts take fingers off. If you're not comfortable opening a hood, find a mobile mechanic or an independent shop with a real reputation. Get a second opinion. Always get a second opinion. The cost of a second opinion is a coffee. The cost of being wrong is your bank account. Tick number 1, the $0 tick. Fuel injectors and heat shields. Half the panicked engine noise videos posted online are people filming their direct injection fuel injectors doing exactly what they were designed to do. Modern direct injection engines run fuel pressure somewhere between 2,000 and 30,000 psi, depending on the platform. To do that, they have piezoelectric or solenoid injectors that physically snap open and shut thousands of times per minute. It sounds like a sewing machine. It sounds like a tick. It is loudest when you stand directly over the engine bay at idle with the hood open. If you have a Mazda Skyactiv, a Toyota 2GR, a modern Subaru FA, a Ford EcoBoost, you have factory injector tick. It has been there since you drove the car off the lot. You only noticed it because somebody on social media told you to listen for it. Cost to fix, $0 and a deep breath. Right next to that is the heat shield rattle. The thin sheet metal cover wrapped around your catalytic converter or your exhaust manifold loses a spot weld after 100,000 miles of heat cycling. Now it rattles. It rattles in a specific RPM band, usually 1500 to 2500 RPM, and goes silent when you press the gas harder or let completely off. The dealership quote for a rattling heat shield is somewhere between $800 and $1,500 because they want to replace the entire catalytic converter assembly. Reality, a single hose clamp from any hardware store, $2 wrapped around the loose shield. Or if you feel like driving to a muffler shop, a single spot weld, $20. Or if the tab is just bent, push it back into place with a screwdriver while the exhaust is cold. 5 seconds, free. Tick number 2, the $50 tick, the loose or blown spark plug. This is the one everybody is talking about right now because of the social media cycle, and yes, it is real, but it is not what most ticking actually is. Here is the actual physics. Spark plugs seal the combustion chamber with a crush washer or a tapered seat. Torque spec on most modern plugs is between 15 and 25 foot-pounds. If a plug backs off even a quarter turn, you get a tiny gap between the threads. Every time that cylinder fires, you have combustion gases at well over 1,000 psi suddenly looking at a free path to atmosphere. They escape through the loose threads. The escaping high-pressure gas snaps against the cylinder head and creates a sharp metallic tick. It is tied to one cylinder. It is RPM dependent. And almost always your car will throw a check engine light with a misfire code, P301 through P308, depending on which cylinder. That is your tell. If you have a tick and a misfire code on one specific cylinder, pull the coil, pull the plug, inspect the threads, clean them with a thread chaser if you have one. Follow the plug manufacturer's anti-seize guidance because many modern iridium plugs come pre-coated and forbid extra anti-seize and torque to manufacturer specification with an actual torque wrench. Here is where I am going to fight the rest of the internet. You do not freehand this with a regular socket wrench and a wrist guess. Aluminum cylinder heads, strip threads with shockingly little over torque. If you crank that plug too tight, you pull the threads out of the head. Now, Your $50 fix becomes a $1,500 time cert or helicoil insert job, or in a worst case, a new cylinder head. Use a torque wrench. They cost $30 at any parts store. Borrow one if you have to. There is also a chronic version of this on Ford 5.4 Triton 3-valve engines from roughly 2004 to 2008, where the spark plugs literally blow straight out of the heads because the factory plug design had insufficient thread engagement. That is a known defect with documented repair procedures. If you own one of those engines, research the proper repair before you touch anything. Tick number 3, the $200 tick that gets billed as a $4,000 tick, the exhaust manifold leak. This is the single biggest overcharge target in the entire automotive service industry, and I want every person watching to internalize this section. This is the one that gets sold to you as a destroyed engine when it is genuinely an afternoon of gasket work. Exhaust manifolds and exhaust manifold studs crack and snap. GM small block LS engines, your 4.85.36 snap exhaust manifold bolts so reliably that there are forum threads about it going back 20 years. Subaru EJ Boxer engines blow exhaust donut gaskets like clockwork around the 100,000-mile mark. Honda V6 J-Series engines warp their manifolds. Older Chrysler Hemis crack manifolds. It is a known wear item on dozens of engine families, and the fix is well documented. When a manifold cracks or a stud snaps, you get a tiny gap right at the cylinder head. Combustion gases at extreme pressure shoot through that gap and slam against the surrounding metal. It sounds metallic. It sounds rhythmic. It sounds deep. It sounds, to an inexperienced ear or to a lazy diagnosis, exactly like rod knock. Here is the giveaway that costs nothing to check. Manifold tick is loudest when the engine is cold and gets quieter as the engine heats up. The reason is that as the metal expands with heat, it partially closes the gap. Rod knock does the exact opposite. Rod knock gets worse as the engine warms and the oil thins out. So the next time a service writer tells you that you have rod knock, ask yourself one question. When was the noise loudest? At cold startup or after a half hour of driving? If the answer is cold startup and it quiets down, you almost certainly have a manifold problem and not an internal failure. Dealership, quote, $2,500 to $4,000 for vague internal engine repair. Reality, $80 in gaskets, $200 in labor at an independent shop. New aftermarket manifold, if yours is cracked, $300 to $500. Total worst case is a tenth of what the dealer wants to charge. Tick number 4, the $80 to $400 tick. Stuck lifters and valve lash. Modern engines with hydraulic lifters can develop a tick when the oil gets dirty, when the oil viscosity is wrong for the climate, when the engine has sat for a long time, or when oil supply to the lifter is partially blocked by sludge from skipped maintenance. The tick comes from the top of the engine, follows valve train timing, and often clears up after the oil fully heats and circulates for 10 or 15 minutes. The cheat path is a complete oil change with the manufacturer's specified viscosity, possibly a careful engine flush done strictly according to product directions, and possibly an additive added in the cycle before your next change. I have seen lifters unstick over a single proper oil service. Cost $80. Dealership quote for the exact same noise. Internal engine work, $2,000 and up. Same noise, wildly different bills. For engines with mechanical lash, Honda K-Series, Honda B-Series, Toyota 22R, older Nissan engines, valve clearances drift out of spec at regular service intervals. Your owner's manual literally schedules valve adjustment at 60,000 or 100,000 miles. People skip it for decades and then panic when the ticking starts. Cost to adjust valves at a specialist shop, $200 to $400 depending on engine. It is scheduled maintenance, not catastrophic failure. And the same engines that famously developed this tick are some of the most overbuilt engines ever produced by humans. Honda K-Series internals are forged. Toyota 22R blocks are legendary for running 500,000 miles on basic care. They tick because they need a tune-up, not because they are dying. Tick number 5. The real $4,000 tick. Actual genuine rod knock. This exists. I am not going to pretend it doesn't. When the connecting rod bearings wear out, typically from oil starvation, severely overheated oil, sustained high RPM with degraded oil, or sometimes from a known manufacturing defect on a specific engine family, the rod develops play on the crankshaft journal. Every power stroke, the rod hammers down on the crank. Every other stroke, it hammers back up. You get a deep, low-frequency knock from the bottom of the engine. It gets worse under load. It gets worse with heat. It often pairs with low oil pressure on a real gauge, not just the dashboard idiot light. It often pairs with metallic glitter or shavings when you check the dipstick or pull the drain plug magnet. If a shop tells you that you have rod knock, Here is what an honest diagnosis looks like before you write any check. 1. They must perform an oil pressure test with a mechanical gauge, both cold and hot. 2. They must perform a cylinder isolation test, killing ignition or fuel to each cylinder one at a time with the engine running. If the knock disappears or dramatically reduces when one specific cylinder is killed, that cylinder has a spark or detonation issue, not a bottom-end problem. Genuine rod knock does not go away when you kill one cylinder, because the rotating assembly is still being driven by the other cylinders. 3. They should pull the oil pan and physically inspect for bearing material, scoring on a journal, or copper showing through a bearing surface. A diagnosis with none of those tests performed is a guess. Possibly an expensive guess, possibly a deliberately expensive guess. If you actually do have confirmed rod knock, your real options are a used engine from a JDM importer or a reputable junkyard, $1,500 to $3,000 installed at an independent shop, a remanufactured long block, $3,500 to $6,000, a full rebuild at a machine shop, $4,000 to $8,000, or send the car to the auction and walk away. The dealership complete engine replacement at OEM pricing, quote, of $7,000 to $12,000 is almost never the right answer for a vehicle that's already out of warranty. Quick break before the driveway diagnostic. If you have ever been quoted $4,000 for an engine and you are sitting here learning that the real fix might have been $80 of gaskets, hit the like button. It is the only way this video gets past the auto industry algorithm suppression. Drop a comment with the exact quote you were given and which engine you were driving. Every comment is another data point for the next person who walks into a service bay scared and outnumbered. Subscribe and hit the bell before the dealership ad money buries this channel. Your 5-minute driveway diagnostic. You run this before you tow anywhere, before you sign anything, before you panic. Cold start test. Start the engine cold, first thing in the morning. Listen for the first 30 seconds. If the tick is loudest right at startup and gets quieter as the engine warms, you are looking at a manifold issue or a lifter issue, not rod knock. Load test. Hold the brake firmly, put the car in gear, gently raise RPM against the brake. Rod knock gets dramatically louder under load. Manifold tick barely changes. Lifter tick barely changes. Cylinder isolation. With the engine running, gloves on, and aware of hot parts, pull one ignition coil connector at a time. Wait 10 seconds between each. If the tick disappears or dramatically changes when you kill a specific cylinder, your problem is in that cylinder's combustion or ignition path, not bottom end. Oil check. Pull the dipstick in good light. Wipe it, reinsert, pull again, look for metallic glitter or grit, pull the drain plug if it has a magnet, look for shavings stuck to it. Clean oil with no shavings is a very strong signal against bearing failure. Second opinion. Always. Find an independent shop with a real online reputation. Find a mobile mechanic. Find a JDM specialist if you drive Japanese. A 20-minute diagnostic at an independent runs $50 to $100 and can save you $4,000. A few last warnings because I refuse to send anyone out of this video with half of the picture. Do not crank on spark plugs without a torque wrench. Aluminum heads strip and the repair is many times worse than the original tick. Do not keep driving on a confirmed knock if it really is rod knock. Once a bearing lets go, you can throw a rod straight through the side of the block, and that can happen at highway speed with traffic behind you. Do not assume every shop is lying to you. Real rod knock exists. Real internal failures exist. The point of this video is not to make you distrust every mechanic. The point is to make you walk in informed enough to tell the honest ones from the lazy ones, and to ask the right questions before anybody touches your engine. Do not pour aggressive engine flush products into a high-mileage neglected engine without research. Some flushes will dislodge sludge that was the only thing still sealing a worn gasket, and you will create a leak that was not there yesterday. Right product, right engine, right reason. That is the whole framework. 5 ticks, $0 to $4,000. Now you know the difference. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you at the next tear.